to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. A reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday between 2 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, William Liu. And given that this is Tuesday and given that this has been way too long, I'm joined by the Fan Morning Show's Blake Murphy, producer.
Blake Murphy.
How you doing, Blake?
Well, I'm back, so that tells you a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm all right. Last night, I'm a little starstruck today.
Oh,
after being out at your event last night, the event you and Alex put on in association with AsianGoldRibbon.com to stop anti-Asian racism. It was a great event.
Yeah.
Awesome turnout. You getting roasted by Jason.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, Jason, I know you're listening out there with your girlfriend at night. And, you know, before bed.
He never makes it to the third star.
Anyway, Jason, hit me up, man. Reach out. I might have to call you up.
Yeah, this guy
often.
steals your university haircut and then comes up on stage at your event and roasts you.
Yeah, and it was in a great tracksuit as well. No, but seriously, it was a great event. I guess shouts to everyone who were coming out. It was super humbling. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done. You know, to see like a lineup down the block. I don't know why Alex told everyone to come line up. It made no sense to me. We had seating for everybody. So for people who came in at like 6 o'clock,
you know why he
7
did?
o'clock doors.
So you guys could tell people, or he can tell people that there was a lineup.
I mean, listen, there's a lineup around the block.
Club promoting 101.
Yeah,
always keep a line.
You know, you're right. Actually, you're right. You know, salute to Super Fresh, salute to Trevor and Elaine for
That
helping
place
us
is
put
awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that just opened Friday.
Just open Friday.
Nice.
It's in the Annex. It's where Annex Food Hall used to be. Now it's called Super Fresh. There's a bar in there. There's a few food vendors in there. Actually, there's 2 bars in there. It's a speakeasy hidden somewhere in the back.
And it's a great setup for anyone who doesn't know what it is. You just go, you're at a table, you scan a QR code, and you do everything from your phone. You could order from a couple different places at once. All gets brought to your table.
Yeah.
At some terrific bow.
Nice. I was made aware that there is a bow shortage right now in Canada.
How?
Yeah, that was my question too. But I don't
you
know.
just like put a little hose in the bread and pump it up, and that's what it does? I don't know the technique here.
No, I've seen my mom make bao and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like there should be a shortage just based on the fact that I guess you can make them. But I don't know. I had a long conversation about this.
Well, I'm glad I got them in while I can.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You should be grateful that you had some bao. But no, seriously, it was a great event. Thank you for coming out. We raised a lot of money for a really great cause. And honestly, given the turnout and how fun it was, I think we'll probably do it much more often. But in the meantime, we are going to talk about the Toronto Raptors once again. And we're all going to cover the rest of the playoffs as well. I wanted to get your thoughts on the 2 conference finals matchups. But, you know, Blake, one of the things, I was actually looking at Reddit, the Raptors Reddit page like a week ago, and someone posted that, you know, they were really, really missing your offseason primer post.
Next week, Sportsnet.ca.
It's coming? Okay, good. So it's going to come. I guess I'm just going to get the advanced copy, hear from you on the show, and just basically look at what this summer has in store for the Raptors in terms of some key decisions, starting with free agency. We know the key free agents are Chris Boucher, Thad Young. I guess Justin Champagnie and Delano Banton also require new contracts.
Well, no, Banton's got a non-guaranteed for next year.
Okay, so
Banton's good to go as long as they want to keep him. It's got like just a small partial.
And we're probably going to keep him.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
It's
1.5
mil at the end of the roster. He showed enough this year.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it was great in the G League too. But the 3 key free agents there, Chris Boucher, Thad Young, Justin Champagnie. Let me get your quick thoughts on the 3 of those guys, sort of where the Raptors stand with them potentially, and also what you would estimate their contracts to become.
Yeah, so I'm going to start at a higher level, and just the way the Raptors cap sheet lines up is you're not a cap space team this summer. And for anyone who doesn't know, look ahead to my offseason primer at sportsnet.ca next week, and I'll get into some of the details of why. But basically, even if you can get into cap space, every team has a decision to make at the start of the offseason of whether they want to operate as an above cap team or a below cap team. The only times you really want to operate as a below cap team is if you're carving out significantly more than the mid-level exception to chase free agents. if you're the Raptors, so last year, for example, everyone thought, oh, maybe it was the Giannis chase year and all that stuff, or rather the year before. But what happens is you're forced into a position where to get that cap space, you have to waive any of your free agents. You have to waive any of your non-guaranteed contracts. So last year, had you wanted to chase, say, a Rashawn Holmes, which was a name that I really liked, and I still think he would be a good fit if he shakes free on the trade market, you would have had to waive and renounce Yuta, waive and renounce Chris Boucher, waive and renounce any, had they not signed their second round picks or not signed their first round pick, all that stuff. And you have to, you would also punt on having the mid-level exception. You would have the smaller room exception instead. So the Raptors are going to enter this offseason with a fair amount committed because their top 4 guys make a good amount of money. Scotty Barnes makes a good amount of money. And they have a few guys down the roster still under contract. So what they're going to head in the offseason with is the mid-level exception, which right now, based on our latest projections, starts at about $10.3 million.
Yep.
You can go up to 4 years on that. You can split it between players, whatever. And you'll have the biannual exception, which will kick in around $4 million or so. You have those two things. You have your second-round pick. You have obviously undrafted free agents and camp invites and stuff. You can always sign more minimums up to 20 guys. But that's pretty much it. Mid-level, biannual minimums.
Yep.
So that puts
and you can't combine them.
You cannot combine them. They have a couple trade exceptions too, but they're small and you can't combine those either.
Yeah.
So you're looking at basically mid-level exception, biannual exception, second round pick, and maybe trades. Those are your ways to add. So that puts an extra pressure, I think, on retaining Chris Boucher and Thad Young, to a lesser extent, Justin Champagnie. But the reason that you might be more inclined to re-sign those guys, even if it's not a discounted deal or anything like that, is that you don't have a recourse to replace them. You're already tied up with just the mid-level and biannual to try to add to this group. And that's, now, the fortunate side of that is you've got $30 million in change to work with to use the mid-level, the biannual, get Boucher a new deal, get that a new deal, take back a little bit of money in trade. You do have some real flexibility under the luxury tax. You just got to be creative with how you do it. So that puts, to me, a premium on, I think it's much more likely today than I did at the start of the season that Boucher's back next year. I think they probably don't acquire Thad Young without some idea of his intention to re-sign.
Yep.
Champagnie is realistically, he's not going to be able to command more than the minimum. Like the restricted free agency process for 2 ways is garbage. So his qualifying offer will be a 2-way contract with like 50 grand guaranteed.
Yeah.
Obviously the Raptors are going to qualify him. And then we haven't really seen 2-way RFAs get poached with great deals too often. So I would assume Champagnie's back on a minimum deal.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Which I think he earned.
Yeah, totally.
That's 2.5 times what he made last year. So it's a nice little raise, even if it doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he was briefly in the rotation, kind of. In around December, there were some injuries at that time. And then,
showed a lot of growth down the stretch with 905, too.
A lot of growth. 3-point shooting was a big improvement for him. You saw multiple games where he was hitting 5, 6, 7 threes a game. He
was the only Raptor going up and down who was figuring out the defensive side for a while there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, listen, 905 defense.
G League's not about defense.
Yeah,
they changed the name from D League for a reason.
Damn. Okay, so that's a great bigger picture look at sort of the pieces the Raptors have to work with. I think I'm in agreement with you as well in terms of Chris Boucher being much more likely to be retained on this roster. What's like the ballpark of something that feels fair for both Chris and the improvements that he's made in this game and the Raptors, and just based on their financial situation at the moment?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at a Chris Boucher contract, let's look at it from Boucher's camp.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a pretty weak free agent market. It's as thin as the bow market right now.
It's tough.
People are scrambling for free agent bigs the same way they are for bow. There's not a lot there that he's competing with. But at the same time, I think in the latest Bobby Marks update, only 5 or 6 teams project to have meaningful cap space.
Yes.
So all of those free agents are competing for just a little bit of money. So Boucher's competing with Bobby Portis and Mo Bamba and Yusuf Nurkic and Nick Claxton and guys like that for a limited amount of money, and that's just at the big man spots across a limited amount of teams. So if you're Boucher, I think you go into the offseason thinking if you can get a multi-year mid-level, obviously at his age, you're shooting for 4 years and $45 million, whatever the mid-level projects out to when we get the actual cap numbers. If you're the Raptors, I think you're okay with that annual value. You don't want to go 4 years term.
No.
The Raptors just, they don't love to give term to mid-level guys anyway. But also you have to look at Pascal, Fred, OG, Gary, and Scotty Barnes. get expensive as you move forward. And Gary and Fred can actually opt out after this season, like
Right.
after this coming season. So you've got to worry about your key guys getting more expensive. So if you're looking at a Boucher deal, it's almost a situation where how I felt with Mark and Serge, where it's like, if you give him a 1-year deal, I don't care what the number is. Bring him back, overpay him for 1 year, whatever, if you got to do that. But it's the longer term commitment that I'd worry about for the team's cap flexibility. Because I think, Boucher now and Boucher over the next 2 years, even if he's getting $10 million, is a movable guy. Teams will be interested in that.
Totally.
That's a good value for an energy bench big. But the 32-year-old version of Chris Boucher at the back end of that contract is probably a tougher thing to have on your cap sheet.
Okay, what about 2 years, $10 million a year?
Yeah,
you very happy with that?
If I'm the Raptors,
that feels fair, honestly.
Yeah, and maybe you get depending on the market, maybe you can negotiate something where that second year isn't fully guaranteed. Like Boucher's last deal was two years, $7 million and change per, and the second year was non-guaranteed, and that allowed Boucher to get a little bit more in annual value, and the Raptors to get a little bit more flexibility. Maybe there's room to do something like that. Boucher probably wants to cash in as much as he can in guaranteed money, just given what his careers look like so far, and the fact that he is older for a prospect type or a post prospect type. So yeah, if you're the Raptors, I think 220 is fine. I think if you're Boucher, you're probably hoping for greater annual value than the mid level if you're signing a 2-year, but there's some wiggle room there to get something done. I think 220 is reasonable.
Yeah, totally. I agree. With Thad Young, that's a more interesting one to me because of the fact that he's older, he can still contribute, he's happy to come off the bench. You have to wonder how much he wants to be in a championship organization, considering the fact that he's played 15 years in the league. He's not yet won the championship. But he had a lot of great things to say about the Raptors. Genuinely think he had a great time here. Obviously, him and Masai. Masai's talked about how he's wanted Thad for quite a while, and he finally joined the team. And as you mentioned, you don't trade for him at the trade deadline without the Raptors are very specific in mentioning that they got a player with their full bird rights, right? So that is a little harder for me to ballpark, but what about something like a 1 year, $10 million? Is that too much? This feels a little high.
It is on value. Like, he's not going to be a $10 million player in terms of his role next year. Like, look at the amount of forwards that they have. They already had a crunch trying to get minutes for all these guys. Like, maybe there's a scenario where Kem Birch is outbound in something and that $6.7 million comes off the books. Yeah. I know they like Kem Birch a lot as a chemistry piece and an organizational piece, but on merit, he's probably the odd man out of that 4-5 combo group.
Yeah.
So maybe something like that shakes out. I don't think Thad Young's going to return $10 million of value, but I also, again, I'm
trying to do a balloon payment for a year, so you avoid
exactly.
any of the long-term commitments.
This isn't as important at Thad Young's age. It maybe is at Chris Boucher's age. Bird rights roll over, right? As long as you don't get waived or change teams in free agency, your bird rights continue. So if you re-sign Thad for a year, you re-sign Boucher for a year or two, you can revisit that later, or you can sign and trade later, things like that. I would wonder if something closer to the biannual is in the mix for that. Like, maybe you're looking at something like 2 years, $12 million.
Yeah, that sounds good too.
Yeah, it's hard to peg because you never know what the value is going to be on these guys in their 30s, right? Like, Iguodala's out there at 38 and has been signing. He got $15 million on this deal, but that was kind of the weird Miami thing where they did the creative contract primarily to be able to trade him later. It's hard to say. He's one of the older guys on the free agent market too, which makes it tough to figure what his market's going to be. Is someone going to chop off a chunk of the mid-level for one more year of Thad at like a Thad level? I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe his market is more the biannual. So then you've got a little flexibility there if you give him a second year.
You know what? That makes sense. I like that. Of course, you can always.
He is almost 34.
Yes, that's right. And you can play around, and he's played a long time in the league as well. You can also play around with that second year, maybe, especially if you give him the whatever, you guarantee some money, whatever. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with both of those.
Yeah. So let's look at what that would do. So say. Let's bump that up to 7 just for estimation purposes.
Okay.
Sure. And we'll give Chris the 10 and we'll give Champagny the minimum. So what that looks like then is you've got, and then we're assuming Banton gets picked up on his minimum. Let's, for the purposes of this, assume Armani Brooks isn't back. He might be, but he's got another small partial guarantee on the second year. It's just not likely that all those guys will be back.
Yeah.
I'd imagine Svi's picking up his $1.9 million player option. Be a little weird if he didn't.
Yeah.
So you're looking at we've just got to about 230, that would be bad.
Yeah.
130 million or so
Mm-hmm.
in salary, and that's across 12 guys.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at two ways, which don't count against the cap. You're looking at 3 spots to fill, your second round pick, assuming that doesn't take a two-way spot, a
Mhm.
mid-level, and a biannual.
Yeah.
I think that's an okay spot.
Yeah.
And obviously you can trade and, maybe there's a home for someone else. Like again, maybe a Kem Birch trade materializes. Maybe Thad comes in at a lesser number, whatever.
You probably have to give us some assets to get rid of Kem's deal. You don't think
Maybe.
so?
I don't know.
There's 2 years left on that thing.
Yeah, and it's fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a part of something else. Maybe you take back
Yeah.
a different, like an iffy contract at a different position just to kind of balance things out a little bit. I'm not sure. But yeah, so that puts you in a spot where you could retain Boucher and Thad for about 16, 17 million and have your way to the mid-level and the biannual. I don't think they would push all the way, like use 100% of both of those exceptions, because you want a little wiggle room under the tax entering the season in case a trade comes up or you want to 10-day someone later or whatever.
Mhm.
But that's broadly what you're looking at for the offseason. Boucher and Thad back on reasonable deals, and then you can have your mid-level and your biannual. Boucher and or Thad walk, you still only have your mid-level and your biannual. So
Right. Now, real quick before we get to the mid-level, what that might look like, what some players, could fit potentially. Just rapid fire with the rest of these guys who are on the roster. Brooks? Yes or no?
well, he'll be in the system over the course of the offseason.
Okay.
Like he's got one of those. It's only 50,000 guaranteed, and then he gets like another 200K kicked in if he's still on the roster after summer league.
Mhm. Okay.
So you've got the Raptors have done this a lot, and Banton's has some staggered guarantees too. I'd imagine Champagne's deal will too.
Yeah.
They like doing that with guys where there are a couple. It's what they did with Ish Wainwright and Bonga and Decker
Right.
last year.
Right.
Obviously, the choice there didn't work out as well as you'd hope, but it's the same idea of give all these guys a little guarantee, and then you've got a decision to make in June, and then another decision in July, and then another decision in September, and it lets you kind of trim the group competing for roster spots down over the course of a longer sample, and you get Armani Brooks in your program for the offseason and see how he starts to develop and stuff like that. So I think he'll definitely be on the roster as late as summer league, I would imagine.
Mhm.
If he kicks around beyond that, probably depends on how he's looking in the system.
Fair enough. Utah, probably done.
Yeah, I think he probably gets an NBA deal, but
Okay.
it's been, if I'm him, I would like to go somewhere that's like a fresh start and a fresh path to opportunity. I think like he's been 4 years in the league and still hasn't really gotten much consistent opportunity.
Yeah.
He's a fresh start candidate for me.
Bring him to Washington. All right. Utah and Rui can finally be teammates. Bonga?
See ya.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is one of those weird ones where I understand taking a flyer on a still youngish player who has a unique skill set
Mm-hmm.
and who's willing to go to the G League for his entire 4th NBA season, basically, which he has to give permission for. The trouble is, and this was the trouble with the Decker deal as well, and one of the advantages I thought Ish Wainwright had is that it's a 1-year deal. So you don't have bird rights. You have non-bird rights, which for someone like Bonga, he's probably only signing the minimum anyway.
Yeah.
So it's fine. But had Bonga clicked, had it worked out, well, suddenly you don't have bird rights on him. And there was just not a lot of team side upside on that one, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Isaac Bonga is a EuroLeague All-Star next year.
No, fair enough. David Johnson? Joining him in the EuroLeague?
I don't think I've seen enough. I think another NBA team might take a shot at him on a two-way or
okay.
something like that. It's just his season was so stop and start with injuries and stuff. And there were a couple segments of that G League season where he looked like he was figuring some things out offensively, but I never really thought the defense was there.
Yeah.
Especially like him and Delano both had a bit of a tough go in the playoffs defensively. And it just like, that's the time where you really hope that all the defensive learnings of the season kind of come together for you. And that Delaware team that spaced them out 5 out.
There was no defense played by either team on that.
No.
Maybe a little bit by Pat McCaw.
Yeah, center Pat McCaw.
Salute to,
Yeah,
G League's
traditional
weird.
rim protector Pat McCaw.
Yeah, the final score for that game was like, I think the point total
It was like 145, 139 or something like that.
I think it was like 270 points were scored or something. Yeah, it was kind of outrageous.
Yeah.
I agree with all that. Okay, in terms of the mid-level, we'll probably have a longer discussion about this some other day. If
you forgot one guy.
Who?
The restricted free agents rights to Nando DeColo.
Oh.
He'll obviously receive the qualifying offer once again because they don't need the cap space. They'll be an overcapped team.
Do you think he receives like a letter in the mail?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Or I don't know, a DocuSign.
Yeah. That's a little less exciting. I kind of like him, ripping up his mail somewhere in wherever he is. He's been playing where, Cheska Moscow?
I think he moved teams this year.
He moved teams? Okay. Well, in any case, Nando was cool.
Yeah, he's
for
with
that.
Fenerbahce.
Fenerbahce? Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it is a funny running joke that. So when was the last time he played in the Raptors? 2014?
Yeah. Yeah, the Austin Day year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when we first started. Well, not for you. That's when I first started blogging. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, don't age me.
Yeah.
Don't tell people how long.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2013, 2014 was when he was last on the roster, which means that tells you that there have been 8 seasons now where the Raptors have kept that on their books. And the reason is in 7 of those seasons, they've operated as an above cap team. They just haven't had cap space. And the one season they did have cap space, they had enough that it didn't really, like the Damari Carroll year, it was enough that like you didn't really have to carve everything out.
It was an interesting year.
Yeah.
That was an interesting free agency target, which brings us to mid-level targets. Yeah. Okay. So look, like I mentioned, we'll probably have a longer discussion about this, considering this is probably the one biggest clear-cut avenue for the Raptors to add immediate help to their rotation for next season. Let me just get one mid-level exception target from you.
All right. It's
So as we mentioned, mid-level, $10 million. You can go up to 4 years with that if you want to. Raptors may not use the whole thing. Maybe they will use the whole thing on one player. Who knows? But let me get one name.
So I'm gonna say Malik Monk.
Okay.
Part of it is I really wanted him as a buy low target last summer. Obviously, you'd rather get the guy before he breaks out.
Yeah, he totally broke out this year for sure.
And the Lakers are in a situation that I just outlined with Bonga, where it's like, okay, well, you signed him to a 1-year deal, and he's not going to sign the minimum again, and you don't have rights on him, and you're the Lakers, so you don't have a path to real cap space. So I think he's definitely a target that could potentially leave. If I'm the Raptors, I'm prioritizing perimeter play, shooting, someone who can handle the ball a little bit. So the names that fit that a little bit and aren't because we could look at restricted free agents too, but then you've got to factor in, okay, the chances it's getting matched, are you getting your cap space tied up and stuff like that. So I don't know how worthwhile that list is, but the list of guys who can shoot and dribble a little bit is pretty thin. It's like Malik Monk and Pat Connaughton, and that's about it for UFAs.
What about Kyle Anderson? He's a UFA.
Yeah. I like slow-mo.
Me too. Like, as a guy off the bench who kind of plug things and connect things together, there's a bit of redundancy with the Thad.
There is a bit of redundancy, and I'm not sure defensively he can fit what they like to do with all that versatility.
Yeah.
He's not like a terrible defender if he's like
big,
in the post and stuff like that, and he's smart, but he's not. He's nicknamed slow-mo for a reason.
He's comically slow. Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't mind. I've always liked kind of these like in-between players who kind of, play between a few positions. I mean, I don't know. This is the mid-level. Look, we'll have a longer discussion about this, but trust me, it's not that sexy when you're shopping.
No,
the mid-level is like you're shopping at like at SVP, unfortunately.
Yeah, like Gary Harris maybe is the top of that list, but I don't know. Like he probably is aiming higher than the mid-level. But I'm certainly not willing to pay him more than the mid-level. Taurean Prince is a name that's on that list too, and maybe you could find your way to it. Yeah, it's not a great list. Hey, if you wanted to add point guard depth though, what do you think about bringing DeLon back?
How old is DeLon, man? He's
30.
How is DeLon 30? I don't understand this.
Are you saying you think he's younger or older?
How is he that old already? He's only been in the league for like 6 years.
But he feels simultaneously like 25 and 40.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like anyway, yeah. So
2015 draft. So he's been around six years. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's 30. Anyway, yeah. I wouldn't.
He did 2 years of community college though before he did 2 years
at
Utah.
I need more shooting.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the same with. I mean, look, you already traded DeLon once.
I also don't know that he would come back because the way I understand it, he was not particularly happy with his role and was like welcome the change when that happened. So
fair enough. Quickly, last thing actually before we're gonna go to a break. There is the possibility of the Raptors potentially signing some players to extensions. Do we want to? Can you outline this sort of scenario for us, involving Fred and Pascal?
Yeah. So Fred and Pascal are both extension eligible. Gary Trent is not. Gary Trent would be the most interesting extension candidate, given that he can opt out. And this was always the issue with the 2+1 deal is, if this deal hits, then he's getting way more expensive right away. But hey, good for him playing his way into probably more than $18.5 million in 2023. So Fred can also opt out after next season. And he's a more interesting case to me than Pascal, because max guys, it's pretty hard to work out extensions with those guys. It's just like the rules around extensions are not super conducive to getting deals done. Like if you're Pascal, you probably want to make sure that you're getting the full max moving forward, and then you have to factor in his age. And if you're the Raptors, you have to factor in, well, why would we give a max 2 years in advance if 2 years from now we'll be the only team that can give him the full max anyway? Like there's just Siakam doesn't have a ton of leverage in that situation, and I don't think he's the type, like I don't know why he would, accept an extension that's a little more team friendly just to get it done early. Fred's a more interesting one because he can opt out after the season, so there's a real leverage element there. And he's also coming off an all-star year.
Yeah.
You could probably make the case he's underpaid. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know that Fred can make the case that he's a $30 million player, but he is set to make $21 million this year.
Yeah. He's probably closer to 25.
Yeah. I think if you offered Fred at $21 million around the league, you'd have 29 takers.
Yeah.
That would be cool with having that on their books. So that's one where, I would imagine as a means of roster stability and knowing what pieces are there and culture and stuff like that, the Raptors would love to get even a mini extension done where Fred's around through like the end of Scotty's rookie deal, which is also when OG's deal comes up and stuff. So maybe you axe off the option year and tack 2 new years on. So he's through 2025, give him a little raise.
Yeah. So what would that little raise look like? 120%, right? He's making 21 next year. So roughly 25.
Yeah, roughly. I don't have the exact number ahead of me, but
that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're essentially saying, because right now he has the player option for 2023. You give him 25 that year, you give him 25 2024.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Hey, listen, Bobby, get this done. I know you're listening, Bobby.
Yeah.
Happy Asian Heritage Month. Again.
So yeah, what you'd have to do here is for Fred to do it, he'd have to opt out, and then a new extension has to add at least 2 years onto the deal before any options. And you can't have him opt out and sign for less, which obviously isn't a concern here. I don't think you would have Fred VanVleet opt out and sign for less. So yeah, you could sit there with him and be like, hey, here's 2 years, $50 million.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Now I wonder if Fred is looking at 2023 and saying, hey, it's like 2022's market is no teams have cap space. It's a bad free agent market. Well, generally the way these things work in cycles would mean that 2023 has more money on the market and more suitors. Maybe he's thinking like that. Maybe he feels like he should be paid as a co-face of the franchise alongside Pascal. I'm not sure what he's thinking. Yeah. But like he said on his media day, he loves to have conversations.
Oh, listen, I'm sure. He's a businessman. I'm sure these will be had. And look, the relations are very good with both player and the organization, and that doesn't mean that like he's going to be giving discounts or anything like that. But I just think it kind of makes sense financially. Yeah, for both sides. And even like, look, Fred had a great year this year, played a ton of minutes. Ideally, you reduce his minutes a little bit. That probably means his per game numbers come down slightly just because you're playing less. Let's say he has like a similar year to this year next season and hits free agency market. Does he get the max from a team?
I don't think he gets the max. No.
Yeah.
But
so then what are we talking about?
Yeah. And especially if I'm him, I'm at least a little worried that I've had one fully healthy season in my career so far.
Sure, yeah. Nothing like super recurring or anything like that.
No, but it's a lot of major, it's a lot of like miss 5 games here, miss 5 games there, and part of that is probably because he's trying to give you too much. Like he's getting hurt for the right reasons. Yeah, it's just
he's really Kyle Lowry's there.
If you're thinking about his own risk aversion and stuff like that, maybe makes sense. So the one hang up.
Oh, the risk aversion of Mr. Bet on Yourself.
Yeah. The one hang up here with the potential Fred extension that I could see, and the Raptors haven't given any indication that this is their thinking. However, the way the cap sheet lines up is there's a pretty hard pivot point built in right now in 2024. Pascal's contract is up that year. Fred's would be up even if he opted in. OG can opt out that year. Gary could potentially be off the roster. The only 2 people with a contract for 2024 right now are OG and Scotty. And Scotty's is a team option that'll obviously be picked up.
Yes.
And OG's is a player option that if I guessed right now, I would say would be declined for sure. So if you have Fred opt out of his 2023-2024, the rules are you have to have like that can't be an option for 2024-2025.
Mhm.
That's on the books.
Yeah.
So if they see that as a pivot point at all, that's maybe something that gives them hesitation.
I mean, at
But
that
they
point, he's still
haven't
an asset. You can move him
and
if
they
you want
haven't
to.
given us any
Yeah.
indication that like the only indication that that's even remotely the case is the Gary deal being shorter than we all thought. Realistically, you just don't have a lot of guys that still have 4 years left on their deal at any one time.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. We are going to take a break right here. I'm your host, William Lou, and you've been listening to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. When we come back, we will discuss two potential centers that could be available in trade this offseason and also preview the two conference finals matchups. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I'm your host, Win Lou. I continue to be joined by the Fan Morning Show's Blake Murphy. And
we are also joined by producer Alex for an update.
Oh.
The reason the bows are short are because Trevor at Superfresh only gets them from Taiwan.
Interesting.
So it's not a worldwide bow shortage. Like we can't make these or we can't get them anywhere. It's you can't get the high quality stuff.
Damn. Even as a Chinese person, I don't know what the difference is. I thought bows are just bows. But okay, in any case, yeah, go to Superfresh and order all their bows because it's quite delicious. Anyway, so as promised before, we were going to look at the conference finals, but also really quickly, I know there's been a lot of interest on the Raptors side of getting a 7-footer. I don't know, Blake, I don't know how your mentions are, but everybody, I think since getting defeated by Joel Embiid, and honestly, like, obviously there was huge matchup issues. People have been very stuck on this idea of getting a 7-footer. As I have said many times, Joel Embiid cooks 7-footers the same way he cooks guys who are 6'9". I'm just going to tell you that right now. But having said that, though, there are two fairly available centers, I would say, or maybe even potentially available. Fairly available seems a little strong. In DeAndre Ayton and Rudy Gobert. Let's start with DeAndre Ayton, who is a restricted free agent. He famously did not reach an extension with the Suns last year because the Suns did not want to give him the max, which is what he was seeking for. Pretty standard stuff. Number 1 overall pick, wants the max. The Suns did pick him over Luka Doncic, by the way, which looks hilarious in the wake of that second round series. But DeAndre Ayton was not able to get that extension done. The Suns started a really good year, 64 wins, got to the second round, lost game 7, whatever. He got benched in game 7, only played 17 minutes. There were some clips I saw online of him, not exactly playing with game 7 intensity on defense and rotating around. And obviously, there was some matchup issues against Luka. And then after the game, Monty Williams said, in regards to why did he only play 17 minutes, he said it's internal, kind of sparks sort of speculation that Ayton may be available. Now, listen, he's a restricted free agent, so he's free to sign any sort of offer sheets. Obviously, the Suns can choose to match it or not. I think in any scenario, the Suns probably won't let him go without some sort of sign and trade, right? Because it
just sets them back too far to lose a number 1 pick and if not a max contract guy. I don't think Ayton's a max guy, but he's a good player.
Yeah.
And look, losing a good player, this is part of what hurts, or not hurts, but like this is part of the complication and part of the accounting for smaller market teams that aren't traditional free agent destinations or maybe don't have a path to cap space otherwise. Is it's not,
or are cheap and have really bad management.
It's like, look, 5 years, 177 million sounds like too much for DeAndre Ayton, but it's not like if he walks, you have 5 years and 177 million to spend on someone else. It's your number 1 pick. It's your RFA bird rights. It's a tough spot. And you've got, I mean, you have to answer a tough question then too of like, okay, well, Chris Paul's only got 1 guaranteed year left on his deal and he's looking pretty old these days. And then, okay, well, how, if Ayton goes and it's a more traditional sign and trade, it's more on the sign side than a trade side.
Yeah.
What does that look like in terms of, okay, what's around this Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges core? Because Bridges' extension kicks in next year.
Yep.
Booker's obviously locked up. So how do you continue to add to that core to not waste prime Devin Booker years?
Yeah.
And I mean, not waste the last of Chris Paul. So it's a tough accounting for them where I think, if they're going to let Ayton go, I mean, if I were them, honestly, I would let him wait out an offer sheet and just like see that, look, there are only 5 or 6 teams with cap space and even they might not be willing to max you. And then see if you can get something a little lower done. But yeah, if it's going to be a sign and trade, you got to make sure you're honestly hoping he goes to a decent team because then it's over cap and you're looking at it, they need to send you assets to make the math work.
Yeah,
that's why the Raptors are an interesting hypothetical. I don't see the fit necessarily. Like certainly not at that price point.
Yeah, no, because okay, so the max for Phoenix to sign him would be like 177. Max for any other team to sign him 131 over 4 years. Yep. You mentioned already that he's probably not worth the max.
No.
But then again, if you do pay him like a regular contract value, the Suns are probably like, oh, that's sweet. I'm gonna match that now.
Yeah.
And so you kind of always have to give him too much money to get him away from the Suns.
This is why RFA is designed to help teams retain their guys.
Damn it. can't believe these
The
millionaires
system works.
might not get all of their millions. They
The
might just
system
only
works.
get partially a portion of their millions. But no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, these are hard to construct.
Well, here's the way you look at it from a Raptors perspective, though, is it's not just paying DeAndre Ayton $30 million a year for 4 years.
Up real assets.
Yes, it has to work under the cap math, and if he's making $30 million coming back, it means you got to send out about $22 million. You know, we'll see where where both teams end up in cap space after. You know, we don't know the exact numbers yet, what everything will look like.
Sure.
But roughly, you're sending out $22 million.
Okay, well, look at this. OG Anunoby and Kem Birch added together $22 million. Would you do that?
No.
Okay. So there we go. This conversation is short, actually.
Like, I don't, like, maybe if it's Gary Trent in that deal instead.
Why would the Suns do that? All they have is guards.
Is Gary Trent's. Yeah, they have Gary's Trent all over the place.
Yeah, so this conversation is short.
They have a Gary Trent, a Gary Son Trent, a Grayson Trent.
Oh, man. It's still one of the best stories. Man.
Yeah. So I don't really see a fit here in terms of trade. In terms of Ayton himself, like, yeah, it would be nice to have a guy with that kind of size who's 7'1", and he's, you know, he's not elite defensively. He's improved as a pick and roll defender. He's a very good rebounder, obviously, super efficient within his role as a scorer.
Yep.
But I don't know that, like, I have trouble seeing how Ayton jumps from being the guy this year who's probably, you know, his value on the court was probably about like 18 to 20 million, maybe. I don't see what scales in his profile to make him a $30+ million guy, because I don't think he has a skill set where you're running more offense through him and handing him more usage. He's never had good passing metrics or anything like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't really stretch the floor or
no, he doesn't stretch the floor.
No,
he has a little
there at
mid-range
all.
game, but like not really. Like, come on.
And then like defensively, like, okay, he's good at vertically protecting in an often fairly conservative scheme, and he doesn't foul a lot, which is great. But I don't. Yeah, is he going to be able to execute the Raptors' switchiness stuff? And the bigger question is, okay, even if you were willing to live with a defensive center who doesn't execute the Raptors' switching stuff, is he a good enough interior defender to warrant making your base coverage more conservative to keep him around the rim? Yeah. And I don't think the answer to either of those things are yes.
Yeah.
It's like if he was an unrestricted free agent and you had cap space and you weren't sending out assets, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's money. He's about as good a player as you're going to get in free agency generally. I don't mean to like say he's not a good player. He is. It's just he's not a max guy, and I don't love the on-court fit.
Yeah, listen. If you're going to say no to OG, plus I guess Kem.
Also, OG and Mikal Bridges are the same guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of them's like way like thicker than the other guy, but I mean, if like in terms of role, the exact same. Although I gotta say, that team could be very interesting with only wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting, because they're already really hard to stop offensively. Although I don't know what the hell happened in Game 6 and 7, but
yeah. Here's the other thing with Ayton is that it's going to be hard for teams to shake off that the Suns were better off with Bismack Biyombo on the court.
Yeah.
In a playoff series.
Yeah. Damn, he really JV. Okay, all right. Rudy Gobert. Potentially also available in trade. Before we have this Rudy Gobert discussion, 2 notes I have in here. He turns 30 next month. So bon anniversaire in advance to Rudy Gobert, who will be turning 30 on, I think, June 26th. His contract is going to be $38 million next year, $41 million the year after, $44 million the year after that. And when he is 34 years old, $47 million guaranteed player option. I mean, yeah, this is nasty. I don't even want to have this discussion. That contract is too big. Because to me, is like, look, I know the cap is going to go up and everything like that, so proportionally it might go down. But realistically, I just don't think he provides this much value in a playoff setting, and you have him for so many more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some other things with Rudy Gobert in terms of culture fit and stuff like that are, you know, you'd need to iron out as well.
What does that mean?
He's not a well-liked dude.
Okay.
And I don't mean, like, I said this on the morning show a couple weeks ago when it came up, and someone texted in or tweeted at me or whatever. It was like, you talk like you know him. I'm like, I don't know him, but I've been reporting around this team long enough to, like, dude almost gave me COVID when I was in Utah.
Oh my God.
But, like, you hear...
Wait, hold on.
You hear how players...
Was that the game where he touched on the microphones? Was that against the Raptors?
Yeah, I wasn't at that, but I was on that road trip.
Oh, my God.
And then I was at that Nick Nurse charity event when the world shut down.
Well, yeah. I was at the Norman Powell charity event when the world shut down. It's a good time.
Was that at the ballroom?
That was at the ballroom, yes.
Bowling.
Downtown, yeah. Charity bowling for the Boys and Girls Club. Was a good event. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt Thomas, the best bowler there.
Not surprising at all.
Mr. 99%. Yeah. No, I mean, he does look kind of like a bowler.
The guy who's the best shooter and the best like short game in golf is also the best bowler. Sure, this is a finesse guy through and through.
Yeah, it totally made sense.
So the Gobert thing is I mean, an analysis is similar to Ayton in that it starts with what do you have to give up, and his cap hit is $38 million. So the answer to what you have to give up is Pascal Siakam or two of your other core pieces. Or if Utah is just like really, really thirsty for one of your core pieces, them and like a sign and traded Boucher or Thad Young or something like that, the math is really complicated.
Yeah.
The 4 Utah Jazz fans that are on Twitter have been doing some crazy things about Rudy.
Like, hey,
like,
Pascal
would you do Siakam and Barnes or Siakam and OG? It's like, no, the word "and" cannot be in any conversation about Rudy Gobert. And look, Rudy Gobert is probably the most impactful defensive player of this generation in the NBA. Like at the, let's say post Draymond being at the elite.
Draymond is ahead of him.
Yeah, I don't know that Draymond's still at that elite level. So, but we'll call him Co. Then Co most impactful. But he doesn't do like he had 1 field goal attempt in a major playoff game this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his teammates were getting him the ball.
Yeah. Well, again,
There's a reason
he's
for that.
not a super well liked guy.
Yeah.
But no, like when he gets the ball, he can dunk it, but he can't really handle. You can't trust him in a ton of DHO. He doesn't pass at all, which is the way the Raptors project in terms of spacing, especially after a Gobert trade where you're probably giving up one of Trent or OG Anunoby.
Yeah.
Your big has to be able to do a little bit of stuff for you in terms of fake DHOs or just putting the ball on the floor a little bit. He doesn't have any of that. He's always been really turnover prone. And then the big thing is like, is this guy going to be himself defensively when he gets to forget 34? When he's 32, is he still the same guy defensively? $47 million is that's going to be the worst contract in basketball by that year.
We got to put the ether beat over the last 2 minutes of the podcast where you just went in. I mean, it's not even going in. That's the thing.
Again,
this is just a situation.
If this isn't a salary capped league and we're talking about Rudy Gobert as a free agent that you could just add, sure.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really fit the timeline. I don't know that his game's going to age super well, and you have to give up an awful lot to get him.
Yeah.
Now, the counter to all of this is someone might say, well, Blake, if you don't think Ayton or Gobert are all that possible, who do you think's possible? And we end the show there because the list of like you're talking. I mean, I mentioned it when we were talking about Chris Boucher. Like he's competing with Bobby Portis, Mo Bamba, Yusuf Nurkic in the RFA tier, like a Nick Claxton type. Yeah. Maybe you take a flyer on Isaiah Hartenstein. I don't think you get down as far as like the Drummond types. I think you just don't bother at that point. You just lean into the 6'9" thing more. So yeah, there aren't a lot of options there, but at least those options are just money and don't require you to give up a piece of your core.
Yeah, that's right. All right. We got about 5 minutes to quickly cover Celtics Heat and Warriors Mavs. So
forgot there's real basketball still.
Yeah, Celtics. I mean, listen, this was great, honestly. This is what Raptor fans really want to know because now you get a full sense of the offseason.
This is 3 weeks of Blake Murphy Tuesday jammed into one.
Yeah. Wow. Damn. Okay. Well, we did miss you a lot. So Celtics Heat, the season series 2-1 in favor of the Celtics. I guess my main question is like, how are the Heat going to guard the Celtics? Because to me, I think they have a couple of options. I think the one thing with my Milwaukee is I didn't feel like they got creative enough. Shocking for a Bud coach team that they weren't too creative schematically. I think Spo is very different in the way he's going to coach, and I think that the Heat have always been very good in their little zone defense, little 2-3 zone.
Now, we saw now that Grant Williams is the greatest shooter of all time. That's a zone busting situation, right?
Yeah, it turns out if you leave Grant Williams alone wide open for 18 straight possessions where you don't even close out, then he might make 7 threes.
Yeah, he got to do the whole Nick Nurse shooting pill instructional over the course of that game.
It's like line up your right foot to the center of the rim.
Yeah, he's got his little headphones in, taking his time. But so my concerns are more on the offensive side for Miami, and not because I don't think Miami's a good offense. Obviously, they have Jimmy Butler and they have Bam and they have some shooters that can get really hot. Kyle Lowry's out tonight, but they're a pretty good team. But Boston held Milwaukee to I think under a point per possession in that series.
Yeah, no, they strangle the life out of you.
Yeah, and that
was so good.
That was like Giannis had games in that series. Yes. Like that wasn't, I know people were like, oh well, Udoka shut down KD and then shut down Giannis. They didn't shut down Giannis. They just did the best job we've seen of Giannis is going to get his and nobody else is going to.
Yeah, and you look how exhausted Giannis was in Game 7. He was missing finger rolls.
Yeah, he missed 3 shots at the rim.
Yeah,
down the stretch of that one as they were trying to fight back. So that's my bigger question for Miami is, because like Boston also has enough offensive talent and guys who exploit mismatches that I don't think this is a Duncan Robinson series.
No,
Like you got Duncan Robinson on there, and you can have probably Tatum or Brown target him at any given time because who's he on? If he's on Marcus Smart's a screener.
Mhm.
If he's on Grant Williams is a screener.
right.
I don't really know where you're hiding him. Maybe in some of the bench units on like I don't know. He's probably not even keeping up with Peyton Pritchard. Like,
Yeah, Peyton Pritchard's looking deadly these days.
yeah,
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
the rich man's Malachi Flynn. I don't really know what Miami's offense looks like in this one. And I know they had a decent time against Philly at sometimes in that series. Jimmy was terrific. Max Strus was terrific.
It's a different matchup, man.
It is a different matchup.
I would say in that regard, you're gonna really have to leverage the rim pressure that Bam, delivers in terms of as a roll guy, dribble handoff guy.
And the counter to that, Rob Williams is
Rob
back.
Williams, exactly. Which that's going to be a bigger series. So, like for example, the series we just saw, Grant Williams is a much more important piece. This series, I think Robert Williams is going to be a lot more important piece because you keep on the floor, you take away the rim. Bam's not going there, Jimmy's not really going there. Then I think you're really, really in a good spot.
And hey, you know what helps sometimes against a tough zone defense, and this is why the Raptors struggle with it a lot: having a rim runner that you can throw it up to.
Yeah.
And that's something Robert Williams is really good at. I know most of his breakout has been on the defensive end where he's probably going to get some all defensive love.
Sure. Yeah.
But his ability to vertically stretch the floor is important too. And that's going to be important because, again, Spoelstra and Miami are really good. They're going to have some tough stuff for Tatum and Brown.
Yeah. And he's a decent passer too. So if you zone him, obviously you can get him the ball and trust him to make a decision. All right, quickly, we got a minute. Warriors, Mavericks. Season series 3-1 in favor of the Mavs. To be honest, Draymond only played one of these games. Clay didn't play any of these games. Like, it's a very different team. My only question is, can the Warriors get Luka out of playing that LeBron style of game? You know what I'm talking about? Where he's just pick and rolling you to death and getting you mismatches. So we got like 45 seconds.
Yeah, I'm not super optimistic they can do a great job on Luka. What I think Golden State's pressure point in this series is going to be is when they downsize with that super small lineup that they flirted with down the stretch and in the first 2 rounds. What does that look like defensively for Dallas? Because Dallas has been a buzzsaw defensively. They did a great job against Phoenix.
Yeah.
But the faster you are, the more you have to make Luka work on defense. And the Mavs aren't that deep if you take Dwight Powell or even to a lesser extent a Maxi Kleber out of a series defensively, or at least make it difficult for them. So those kind of super small Golden State lineups are really interesting to me in this one. You're not stopping Luka though.
You're not stopping Luka. No, Luka had like a 41-point game, like a 35-point game in the series. Yeah. But
Boston Warriors final?
No, I really want to see a Heat versus Dallas matchup. I just throw it back to 2011. It'd be nice,
Yeah.
Certain things about tradition. Anyway.
Dwayne Casey against LeBron. Do it again.
Oh, okay. All right. That's enough. We're done today. I'm your host, William Lou. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. And please rate and review our show. Reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday between 2 and 3 p.m. Thanks again to my guest, Blake Murphy, and our board producer, Derek Brandeo. Talk to you tomorrow.